Hello everyone and welcome to the Labour Justice Barometer podcast. I'm Aisha Adam.
And I'm Debbie Collier.
And we're your hosts today on the Labour Justice Barometer. In this episode, we switch gears and focus on recruitment practices and particularly what happens when the hiring process itself becomes a site of harm. We speak with Bronwynn Coetzee, an LLB graduate from the University of Western Cape and a current LLM candidate, about her recruitment experiences and in particular an interview for a position as a candidate attorney, which raises serious questions regarding professionalism and power in legal hiring. So what happens when law firms misuse the interview process, and we investigate what remedies exist and do our legal and regulatory frameworks fall short? Debbie, we've been unpacking weighty issues in labour law lately, and today's episode hits closer to home for those entering the labour market, and specifically the legal profession and the practice of recruitment.
Yes, Aisha, thanks. Certainly, recruitment practices in the legal profession are a minefield of their own. I can recall stories from my days and from those of my peers. So after hearing Bronwynn's experiences in a recent interview for a position of candidate attorney, it was clear that things haven't changed. And I thought it would be important that she could join us, if she could join us to share her story with us. Welcome, Bronwynn. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Aisha, for allowing me to collaborate with you and to speaking with you, as this is a very important topic. And I look forward to hearing and discussing vital points in this podcast.
Thanks, Bronwynn. I think before we get there and before we touch on here on your experience, Debbie, maybe let's start with the broader picture. What does labour law actually say about recruitment, and how is recruitment actually regulated in South Africa? Are there any specific obligations when it comes to legal employers like law firms?
So, Aisha, of course, we're all familiar with the gatekeeper, the definition of an employee. If you're an employee, you're entitled to employment rights, but applicants for employment also have rights, and particularly in the case of Bronwynn's experiences here, the Employment Equity Act talks about the prohibition against discrimination in any employment policy and practice. And employment policy and practices include recruitment practices, appointment practices, and discrimination includes harassment. So I would certainly, Bronwynn will still share her experiences with us, but they certainly border on what I would suggest amounts to harassment and bullying and, at the very least, unprofessional conduct of some sort. So we have the Employment Equity Act. We have a protection of personal information. If certain information is being extracted from a candidate, the classic in my day, being a woman, was when do you plan to fall pregnant in an interview? And then, frankly, again, hearing Bronwynn's experience, just basic human decency and communications 101 should all regulate how we behave in a recruitment exercise.
So I think now we've teased Bronwynn's experience a bit more. So now, Bronwynn, before we to build up the suspense, can you tell us more generally about your experience looking for work as a candidate attorney, and just give us an idea of what your general experience was in terms of actually navigating the job market today as well?
I found my job hunting experience quite tedious, as we already know that there's a high youth unemployment rate, and now we also know that law faculties, and I think Prof. Debbie can attest to that law faculties are producing an extensive amount of law students. So now you have a community that is oversaturated with law students, and everyone's looking for candidate attorney positions. So that on its own has made my job searching experience quite tedious and quite emotionally daunting. I've had some good experiences, and as you have teased, I've had bad experiences. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was a bad experience, but definitely tedious, and I think unnecessarily so, if I'm honest with you.
So I think you're withholding some information there, Bronwynn. I know you had one particularly bad experience in your search for a position as a candidate attorney. Tell us a little bit about that incident. Tell us a little bit about the interview that you had and what happened at the interview.
I was invited for an interview for a candidate attorney role. And obviously, as a prospective candidate attorney, you get excited for these interviews. You get excited for an opportunity. You already imagine that the job is mine. So when I went to this interview, I was ecstatic. I was excited. I already told everyone, the job is mine. But got there and met the people, and everything was perfectly fine. And I think we need to take into consideration that the interview process involves people. You send in your CV, or you get recommended to firms. So they look at your CV and then they invite you for an interview. So I was invited to partake in this interview with the thought that my CV was looked after and that it was scanned through. So I went there, and the interviewer made the comment, "Oh, so you completed your master's degree?" As I was an LLM student. So I said, "No, on my CV it states that I'm an LLM candidate, but I'm in the process of finalizing my LLM and my thesis." And she immediately turned red and she looked at the director, and the director also looked at me, and I was made to feel basically that I was a liar, that I wasted their time, and I would actually be more of a liability to the firm, as I will be embarking on finalizing my thesis, and my prospective colleagues, will have to carry the weight. And I defended myself. I told them, "Listen, I have experience in working and finalizing my LLM degree." And they told me, and they asked me, how did I do that? And I told them that I was a tutor at the university. And then they looked at me, and unfortunately, which disappointed me, they told me that that's child's play. And that disappointed me because that was my employment for 2 years. I took it very seriously. I think I had a very positive, not just experience, but I had a positive influence on the students. So that was quite disheartening. The director laughed me out of the room, basically shouted at me, told me that I'm wasting his time, and he left the interview. So yeah, that was unfortunately my experience.
That's a bit of a shocking experience, Bronwynn. I mean, you speak relatively lightly about it now, but maybe just to flesh out some of the detail there, just tell our listeners, did you actually apply to the firm, or how did the interview came about, and what impact did this experience have on you?
Well, till this day, I don't know how this firm has come about, has received my CV. I was called out of the blue to come for an interview. I actually drove all the way from the West Coast to be at the interview. I was very disheartened. I was emotional. I'm pretty sure I cried immediately after the interview because I couldn't believe that people who don't know me don't know really the backstory behind all my hard work. And I was quite proud of being a tutor, being an LLM candidate. I was proud that I wanted to further my understanding of not only the law, but also to better myself, especially as this law field is already congested. You're trying to do something different. You're trying to be a bit different and know a bit more and be more marketable. So it was kind of disheartening that a director of a law firm who was supposed to look at my CV basically called me a liar and said that I would be a liability. So I was disheartened, I was disappointed, I was frustrated at the whole experience.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the director actually and the law firm seemed to have gotten frustrated and upset at the fact that you were doing your LLM. I would have assumed most firms would have wanted to see somebody who has extra studies or extra postgraduate studies. It shows that they're kind of specializing into a niche and, upskilling themselves. And it almost seems like this had the opposite effect on you. Tell us what exactly this impact that this has had on you. And I mean, I'm sure you must have a lot of colleagues and peers in this field that might have experienced similar things as well. But maybe just to speak to that impact, especially now that you have found articles and, just to see that contrast as well. Maybe you can speak more to that experience.
Even though I didn't know the director personally, even though I haven't spoken to the director, you as a candidate, you are pretty excited to meet your prospective employees. You get excited about engaging with someone, speaking more to your thesis. I was excited to engage with him and for him to react that way. And also for a colleague of him, that's a female that knows how difficult it can be, to also dismiss me like that and dismiss my efforts. It was disheartening. And it's almost like my mind had a ripple effect. I thought immediately that all my other interviews would go like that. I was nervous. I thought I wasn't good enough, if I'm honest with you. So it had an immense emotional effect on me. And I was speaking to, like you said, friends. And even though they might have not as bad of an experience, they definitely had negative experiences, which is sad that we could find commonality in negative experiences. And obviously, I know that it didn't just stop with me. There are probably a million and other candidates that this happens to on a daily basis.
You're listening to the Labour Justice Barometer, and we'll be right back. It's almost like you were trauma bonding from this experience, because this experience sounds traumatic. It doesn't encourage you to actually go back into the workplace. And I mean, Debbie, just to build on what Bronwynn has described, what legal or regulatory options exist? I mean, can a candidate attorney in this position, can they approach the LPC? I mean, is there candidate attorneys in this position? What are the routes for them? What can they do after something like this usually happens?
So, Asha, it'll be interesting to hear from Bronwynn whether her or her peers considered any of these options. But I did have a look at the Legal Practice Council's website in terms of complaining about practicing attorneys' behavior. And I had a look at the code of practice and the code of conduct for attorneys and advocates. And there is a process and information on the website and a complaint form for submitting complaints about the conduct or the unprofessional conduct of an attorney. So certainly that is an avenue candidate attorneys can pursue. I can think of 100 reasons why they may decide not to. And we can certainly provide links to that in the episode description. But we can hear from Bronwynn as well. But maybe just to give you some context also to the code of attorneys' practice, the code of conduct. It requires attorneys to remain abreast of applicable laws and regulations, which should include their recruitment requirements, and to behave towards their colleagues in a manner that is, displays integrity, fairness, and respect, and without unfair discrimination. I mean, we have to ask ourselves if Bronwynn was perhaps a male, would she have received the same vitriolic reception that she did, and should avoid any behavior which is insulting and demeaning. This is item 3.14 of the code. And to refrain from doing anything which could bring the legal profession into disrepute. The fact that we're having this conversation, and we will be discreet about the law firm, Bronwynn can and has shared details with us, and we will refrain from wading into that territory. But I found it quite astounding in this day and age of social media that a law firm, and a senior practitioner within a firm would behave in this manner. But just to add to that, the code. The gazetted code also encourages candidates, so it's legal practitioners, candidate legal practitioners, and juristic entities are encouraged to report unprofessional conduct by other legal practitioners to the legal counsel in the manner prescribed. And it also then specifically in item 6.2, it reiterates the prohibition against submitting any person to harassment. That doesn't need to be sexual harassment, any form of harassment, which is unwanted conduct. Clearly, Bronwynn was not inviting the conduct that she was subjected to, which demeans, humiliates, or creates a hostile or intimidating environment. And it really does appear to me that that's the sort of conduct that she was subjected to. So certainly, I can think of all sorts of reasons why the process would not have been pursued. But I would certainly think that Bronwynn had a strong case for using the LPC process.
Most definitely, I will consider that. As walking away from the interview, I definitely felt like something was not right. I definitely felt like my dignity was impaired. Obviously, I didn't know that I could draw up a complaint, because as a prospective candidate attorney looking for employment, you don't think that there are many rights as you are mainly looking for employment. So I did not know that these resources were available to me. And I'll definitely, number one, tell colleagues and friends, but number two, also use that as an instrument to say that, no, this is not okay. Yes, I'm looking for employment. Just as I am there to promote myself, you are there you as a law firm are there to promote yourself. So I definitely think I'll be using that as a tool to right a wrong on my behalf.
I mean, it doesn't take away what you went through, but it might provide some relief to you and your colleagues and your peers that have, underwent these kind of traumatic experiences. Provide that it also serves as a warning as well, that, people can't exactly, law firms and other employers should just be more wary of their recruitment practices, because they do have that duty to provide a safe environment as well. Something that we like to do, Bronwynn, on the podcast, which you might be aware of, is we call it our labor justice barometer. Whenever we look at a case or any kind of jurisprudence, your situation in particular, we measure on the scale of labor justice, whether it was green, fair and progressive, orange, a mixed bag, or red, completely unfair. And I think it's safe to say for all of us here that it was definitely a red. It was definitely an experience in the red, what you went through. Any disagreements?
You're not going to get a disagreement from me on this, Aisha. This is a red in my book, certainly. But good to hear that Bronwynn might also consider taking the matter further. I think unless we start speaking up and pushing back and making it known that these are the practices that our students and our prospective attorneys and candidate attorneys are being exposed to, these practices will continue. So thanks so much, Bronwynn, for joining us today and for sharing your experience, as tough as that might have been. But I'm really pleased you are certainly making your way in the legal profession, and this would have just been a small blip on the way, but the law firms and practitioners who are responsible for this sort of poor performance and misconduct should certainly be brought to books. So yeah, thank you very much, Bronwynn, for joining us.
Thank you, Prof. and Aisha, for inviting me. Like I said, it's a vital issue, and it's something, prospective candidate attorneys, they experience some sort of negative experience within looking for employment and searching for employment. Each one of them has a negative experience, and it's worrisome because it all has a ripple effect. How you treat another person is maybe how that person will treat another person. Law firms really need to look at how they attract prospective candidate attorneys so that we make sure that this behavior does not continue. I think Prof mentioned earlier also that this has been coming on for years now. And I mean, it's 2025. Like Aisha said, we're all about inclusivity. So why bar someone? Why put a label on someone when they're just trying to better themselves? That's why I think what you, Aisha, and what Prof is doing is commendable. And I can only commend you, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Bronwynn, and it's so beautifully put. To you, Bronwynn, and to all the candidate attorneys out there, just know your rights don't start on day one of employment. They begin the moment you're invited into the room. And so, like you said, Bronwynn, let's just keep building awareness. And Debbie, thank you to you, and until next time to our listeners.
This podcast is not intended to constitute legal advice.